Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Andres Ramirez from Andres Ramirez Coaching. Welcome to my brand new YouTube channel. I thought the best way to get started off on the right foot here is just to take a deep dive into one of Tottenham's top transfer targets for next season, Joachim Andersen, centerback from Fulham. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty regarding who the next manager will be at Tottenham, but it seems like, at least some journos are to believe, that Joachim Andersen supersedes interest in any manager, and Spurs would like for him to come in regardless of who is in the coach's box next season for Spurs. So I took a deep dive into his stats, into his performances this past season at Fulham. Before we start talking about the numbers, let's talk about the person. Who is Joachim Andersen? Joachim Andersen is a center back that was loaned to Fulham last season from his parent club, Olympique Lyonnais, in Ligue 1. Now, before that, he was actually very highly rated at Sampdoria, where he really made a name for himself as a young up-and-coming center back. However, he failed to hit the heights that he really wanted to hit at Olympique Lyon, and as such, Olympique Lyon, after 2 years in, decided to loan him out to Fulham. Before all of that, he made a name for himself in FC Twente in the Eredivisie. So he is a player that is very international, has a lot of experience playing abroad. What's been most impressive about him so far is that he has hit the ground running at Fulham in his first season at a club that really struggled. Anyone who has seen Tottenham play this season should not be surprised that their main priority is a top-of-the-line center back. Essentially, what they need to do is plug the gaps that have appeared so consistently during Mourinho's tenure and a little bit through Mason's tenure as well throughout this shambolic season that just ended. So, of course, Daniel Levy, and I'm sure any manager that tries to come in, is going to want some reassurances that Tottenham are placing a priority for this center back. It seems like the scouting staff have bookmarked or earmarked Joachim Andersen in particular due to him being Premier League proven, quite tall for a center back, and also two-footed. That is something that I'm going to dive into when we discuss his style of play in possession. Let's look at how Fulham play. Scott Parker, ex-Tottenham man, has the Cottagers lining up typically in a 4-2-3-1, but this can turn into a 3-4-2-1 using a 3 at the back system as a platform for progressing the ball through the pitch. In possession, then, Parker relies on his center backs to be extremely comfortable and confident on the ball, create angles between themselves into double pivot, be press resistant, and occasionally complete long, accurate passes to exploit the space behind a high press opponent or unlock a medium to low block. As such, a high press out of possession demands that the center backs be squeezing the pitch as much as possible in order to limit the amount of playing space that the opposing team has. This demands a lot of aggression, a lot of athleticism for center backs to come back and make up the ground if there is a long ball played towards a center forward or a striker. So even if this is your first season as a Tottenham fan, God bless your soul, some of the things that I just mentioned should be ringing some bells. High defensive line, high line of pressure in general, great in 1v1 tackles. These are all things that Tottenham have looked for in center backs in the past, especially during Mauricio Pochettino's time. Now, when you take a look at the names that Tottenham have on their short list, this transfer is starting to make a little bit more sense, right? We're looking at people like Antonio Conte, Mauricio Pochettino, even Graham Potter, all of whom have a high press, high defensive line style. So the fact that we are looking at Joachim Andersen right now signifies to me two things. Number one, we either already know who is going to come in, and Joachim Andersen matches the criteria that this incoming manager has, or number two, we have a general idea, right, of the type of manager that Tottenham are going to be going for, that high defensive line, that high amount of pressure up the pitch. And Joachim Andersen has enough overlap with all of those systems, although those systems have nuances, to become a bedrock within that system. But Is it enough though? Does he have the quality to be that stalwart defender that Spurs are looking for? Frankly, after looking at some of his play and some of his numbers, I'm not entirely sure that he does. And this is for a couple of reasons. Number one, his average duel rate is quite low. Again, might be due to him playing in a three-in-the-back system. Of course, players like Davinson Sanchez, Eric Dyer, Toby Alderweireld are all involved in a lot of defensive duels because Mourinho's system demanded that of them. However, Fulham, even though they're going down, tried to play a lot of front foot football, as in a possession style. So the defensive actions across the board for the entire team are lower than the entirety of Tottenham Hotspur. So that might not be a fair comparison. But what about his tackle success rate? Joachim Andersen attempts about 4.26 tackles per 90. And that definitely puts him a lot lower than the rest of the Tottenham squad for reasons named earlier. That being said, his success rate hovers around 58.9%. So around 2/3 of the tackles are ones that he is winning on a consistent basis. Compared to the rest of the Premier League, he doesn't even crack the top 30 as far as tackle completion goes. How does this number compare to other Tottenham defenders? Well, Davinson Sanchez, in his time at Tottenham Hotspur, has developed a bit of a reputation for acting out recklessly, playing as a bit of a headless chicken, panicking whenever he's on a 1v1 or in the 18-yard box. But if you look at his numbers, you can see that he's winning 69% of his tackles per 90. That's a great number. And that, this is for another video, but that does inspire me to say that his time at Tottenham is not yet over, and he still has to hit his peak here at Spurs. Whew, that's a lot of defensive talk. Speaking of possession, let's talk about Andersen in possession. Toby Alderweireld has been incredible in his time at Spurs, but everyone knows that he's aging. He's 32 now, and we don't know what the future has in store for him. Jan Vertonghen, of course, left last year, leaving the most senior center backs at Spurs as Davinson Sanchez and Eric Dyer. Joe Rodon looks good, looks promising, but he hasn't played enough yet in the Premier League to show that he can hit the heights that people expect him to hit. Now, within the two most experienced center backs, Eric Dyer and Davinson Sanchez, neither of them can consistently play the ball from outside the back. Yes, of course, Dyer has a long ball in him every once in a while, but he's not nearly as consistent enough as he needs to be in order for Spurs to rely on him as a constant provider of that out ball. Now, if Spurs are genuinely interested in Joachim Andersen, it's probably because he's a great passer of the ball. In fact, on the Fulham side, he is the one that typically is the fulcrum for quickly switching the ball from the defensive third into either the wingbacks that are higher up the pitch or the center forward. Here we see Andersen on the ball against Manchester United. The Red Devils have marked all of his short passing options, and he can either choose to make a lateral or backward safe pass, but he instead elects to send a long raking pass towards the ball far wingback. The wingback is unable to control the ball, but it just goes to show Andersen's long passing skill. Further, at season's end, Joachim Andersen had the fourth longest pass length per 90 when compared to other center backs at 24.64 meters. What that tells us is that he is consistently making these long raking passes to exploit the space behind the opposition. This is crucial because for Tottenham in particular, we need a lot of help in breaking down defenses and making sure that the defense is always on the back foot and we are playing less predictable football. The last thing that I want to touch on in regards to this Andersen analysis is his two-footedness. I've done a little bit of research and I have not seen anyone mention this yet, but I think it's crucial to the way that he plays. He's just as comfortable with his right foot as he is with his left foot. Now, with conventional knowledge of soccer / football, you typically want a right-footed right center back and a left-footed left center back. Now, this is important because if you have someone that is wrong-footed, aka perhaps an inverted center back, much like think of an inverted winger, that means that they have to take an extra touch in order to control the ball and then send the ball to the outside flank, aka towards safety. There's a lot of other things that go into this as well, and I'll link an article below on StatBob in regards to why this is important. But that being said, the right-footedness and left-footedness of Joachim Andersen can make him a big asset in whatever team he plays at, because all of a sudden, when you pressure a player that is comfortable with both feet, you can push him to one side or the other, but you can't push him towards his weak foot because he doesn't have one. This makes him extremely press resistant. Here we see Fulham play around a very high Southampton press. Areola rolls the ball towards Joachim Andersen, and instead of Andersen latching onto the ball and waiting for it to roll across his body to make the pass with his right foot, he takes it one time with his left foot towards Tete. Fulham are able to then build out from the back and bypass Southampton's press. This might not seem like a huge deal, but again, it goes to show just how important two-footedness can be when you are trying to play out from the back. Andersen, for his part, there's absolutely no chance that he tries to make this pass with a weak foot because it's much too dangerous. Before Spurs fans say, this is not that big of a deal, left-footed, right-footed, whatever, they can play defense. Consider this, Jan Vertonghen was the last left-footed center back that Spurs had. Toby Alderweireld, Eric Dyer, Davinson Sanchez, Joe Rodon, they're all right-footed. When you have a wrong-footed player playing on the wrong side, that can cause a lot of issues. Maybe that's why Spurs' defensive line struggled so much, or maybe it was a factor. Either way, it's something that Spurs staff have to consider moving forward. So to conclude this analysis, Andersen is a good defender. He played well at Fulham, but to be completely honest, I was expecting to see a bit more as I took a deeper dive into his numbers, especially given all of this interest that Spurs supposedly have in him. I was expecting to see something that would stand out. And from what I've seen, defensively, none of his stats really stand out to me, but on the ball, he definitely looks like a good option. That being said, Spurs now have to ask themselves, what's a bigger priority? Do we want a ball-playing center back that can be a good defender, or do we want a great defender that can be an okay ball-playing center back? It's a bit of a false dichotomy because there's a lot of players out there that can fulfill both roles, but I don't believe that Andersen, from what he's shown this season, can be that great defender that Spurs are looking for. I did write an article for Cartilage Free Captain last year on how Joe Rodon can fill Toby Alderweireld's shoes with those long passes. So I'm not sure if we need another young project center back acquisition when Davinson Sanchez and Joe Rodon already fit that bill. So what do you guys think about this analysis regarding Andersen? Is he a good acquisition for Spurs and someone that they should target? Or are you on the other side of the spectrum where you think that he's smoke and mirrors, his stats aren't that great, we should be looking elsewhere? Or are you in the middle? Let me know what you think in the comments, and feel free to hit that subscribe button simply because this is my first video and it's the first of many. I'm going to be making a lot more of these analysis videos. Your feedback and comments are always appreciated. I also don't know how to end a YouTube video, so I'm just going to stop recording now. Cheers, guys.